Welcome. Is life without God enough? That's a great question, and it's part of the top objections to following Jesus. So maybe you're watching this video, you're like, why should I follow Jesus? What's the point? Why does God matter to my life? You came to the right place, and we're going to tackle a bunch of those more important questions, most important questions for your life, for all of our lives. And so, Johan, great to have you here. Thank you for joining me. And as a former atheist yourself, you have some experience with this one. Is life without God enough?
Hi, Kevin. It's so good to be here. Can I start us off by reading a quote? Okay, so it goes like this. In a universe of electrons and selfish genes, blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt, other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference.
Whoa.
Okay, so this is, so this is Richard Dawkins. For those who don't know, he's like one of the fathers of atheism.
Yeah.
And he himself admits that in an atheistic worldview, that life is pretty gloom, okay? You don't have any value. Life has no purpose. The people around you don't have any value. And that's what I experienced myself when I was an atheist. It led me down a dark road of depression and anxiety because I did have these thoughts about why am I even getting up in the morning? My life has no purpose. Why am I putting effort into my life? Why, especially at a young age, like you need to build, your whole life. Like, why is this stuff important? And that's really some of the questions that I really struggled with.
And you were saying like how also like your stories, the further you went down that path of atheism, the darker it got. Because some people might be at the very beginning, or they haven't even really thought about the questions. They just call themselves atheists or non-religious. They don't care about God and stuff. And they think, no, I have a great life. I'm happy and I'm not depressed. That's just you, Johan. It's like, no, but maybe they haven't really asked those questions and they haven't gone down that path, right?
Yeah. So what I would say is that I think a lot of young people in the Western world, they haven't really experienced the hard side of life. They maybe haven't suffered, real loss.
Yeah, young people especially.
Young people especially, yeah. And that's maybe one of the reasons they're not really asking these questions. But we have to be honest and admit that in the Western world, one of the leading causes for death for men between the ages of 20 and 30 is suicide. So depression and anxiety is at an all-time sky-high level. And that's what I experienced when I was an atheist. That anxiety and depression was just always knocking down my door.
Wow.
And the other side of the coin is, I do think that there's a lot of people who would say that they are atheists, but actually they do believe that life have purpose. They do believe that love is more than just a chemical reaction. They do believe that people have value. So to those people I would say, well, then you're probably not really an atheist. Maybe agnostic, somebody searching for God, but not atheist.
Yeah, and that's really key, the difference between atheism and agnosticism. Atheist, there is no God. Agnostic, I don't know if there is a God. That's super key. And that really brings up another point, which you talk about, like the question a lot of people ask you, which is like, doesn't science disprove God? And how could you like abandon science and go after God, Johan?
Yeah.
Great question. But to be honest, not really the best question. I think a lot of people asking those questions haven't really gone into it really to find the answer and to really search for the answer. They're not really searching if there is that possibility because they have this misconception in their mind already. And it's interesting to see also, like you said, about the Western world the majority of atheists, I think, is a very high percentage. They're all white males.
Yeah.
And if you look around the world, it's the large majority of the world actually does believe in some sort of God. And so it is very prideful even to think, well, those people are all just uneducated and they don't know about what we know, and the latest scientific discoveries just hasn't reached them yet. That's all fake. There is no disproving God.
Yeah.
And it's been a while that people have been trying. So science really does not disprove God. And it could even go right alongside God, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
But what about the God of the gaps argument? What is it?
Yeah, so the God of the gaps is basically this argument, famous argument by atheists, that people came up with the idea of God just to fill in the gaps. So, and the gaps would be things they would see in nature that they can't explain, like clouds forming, rain falling, night and day, lightning, thunder, you know, those kind of things. They imagine when we talk about God, we talk about a guy that's sitting on a throne, on a cloud, with a long white beard and a scepter, just like ready to strike.
Yeah, that sounds like Zeus, man.
Exactly like
Zeus to
Zeus,
me.
yeah.
Yeah, the problem with that is when we're talking about God, we also don't believe in any of those gods, actually. I would agree with the atheists in this case. Like, that's all nonsense, because we know where lightning comes from, and we've discovered some of those scientific answers to some of those questions that people would just throw away and say, well, there has to be a God doing that, like harvest and fertility and this and rain. And so I totally agree with that. But when we're talking about God, we're really talking about a transcendent being, something much greater. And it's very interesting if you go to the Bible, which some people would dismiss it as just another God of the gaps, but they haven't really read it. And the first introduction that God gives of, and the name that he calls himself when he shows up to Moses, written thousands of years before today, he actually calls himself, I am who I am.
Wow, yeah.
And that's such a powerful picture and name that God gives himself, because it really is something transcendent. The I am, the very foundation of existence itself. And a lot of atheists, they would say, well, yeah, I don't believe in those gods that they heard about, but they wouldn't be opposed to a transcendent being, a higher power, the highest power, you could say, that was the source and the cause of the whole universe, and he's outside space and time and all those things. There has to be something, an essential, necessary being, or else nothing else would exist. That's one of the arguments for God we're going to talk about in the next video.
Yeah, you know what? I like this analogy that really explains the limitations of science. Because science is pretty good at telling us how things work, but it can't shed any light on the why question. And so, for example, if I'm in my kitchen busy boiling the kettle, and my wife comes in and she's asking me, oh, why is the water boiling? You know, I can give her a very smart answer and tell her, you know, it's actually the heat of the element that causes the molecules in the water to vibrate, and that's why the water is boiling. But that's not the answer she's looking for. The real answer, I'm boiling the water, is because I want tea. So that's the limitation of science. It can't address the why question. And I would argue that the why question, even though the how question is important and it helps us to, you know, make so many advances, you know, in our life, but the why question is at the fundamental heart of every human being. You can ask any parent who has young kids. They all want to know. All the kids, they're always asking, why, Daddy? Why?
That's so true, And I think that's why it makes sense that all over the world, people have believed in God in some way, and go back centuries and centuries before. And I don't think it's going to end either. It's not modern science that's disproving God, and that's why there's more atheists. Actually, that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. And you talk about like ultimate truth as well, and morality, all those things we mentioned. Like there has to be something more.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's really what we're gonna be looking at in this whole series, in all these videos. In my journey from atheist to theist, I just came to a point where I said to myself, listen, I am going to start looking for ultimate truth.
Yeah.
I don't care what I find, but I did believe there has to be some form of ultimate truth. If you just keep looking for it, if I just keep looking for it, I will find it. And that's the journey that I went on. So that's a journey that I want to invite everybody who's watching with us on for the rest of the series.
Okay, that sounds really good, Johan. I think that's a really good explanation of why it matters if there is a God or not. And I think a lot of people, they want to believe in God even. They say, yeah, that makes sense. It would be good if there was a God and he's all loving and all powerful and all these things. But does he actually exist? And that's a very important question. And so let's talk about that in the next video. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Don't miss it.